everyone, and welcome to the second episode of the Star Wars fandom discussion. If you missed out on episode 1, you can find it on our channel or link in the description below. So let's welcome back myself, Louise, Damien, Matt and Sophie, and we're now going to talk about the characters of Star Wars, who's our favourite, who, if there's anyone that we hate. I know Damien will know the answer to this one of who has the most depth. So Damien, who are your top 3 favourite characters and why?
Well, as is obvious that I've made throughout this conversation, my favourite is definitely Anakin / Vader. I just think, as I've said before, I think he's the greatest fictional character of all time. There is so much depth to the character. You know, as Anakin, he was born as a slave. He was a slave to the Jedi. He was a slave to his emotions. He was a slave to Palpatine once he became Vader, and he was a slave until the day he died. And that's all the entire time. Vader, he wanted with Anakin, he wanted his freedom. He wanted to love as he wanted to. He wanted to live his life, and sadly, you know, as Anakin and as Vader, he never got that. He was a slave to the suit that he was put into as Vader. So yeah, definitely my favorite ever character is definitely Anakin / Vader. But if we're going into the other two, I would have to say before the Clone Wars, this character would have been in my top 10. But now, because of the Clone Wars and Rebels, this character is just incredible, and that's Darth Maul. I think Darth Maul is a fantastic character, very Shakespearean, especially in Clone Wars. It's one of the best things that Dave Filoni, who wrote Clone Wars, ever done, was bringing back Darth Maul, and especially Disney as well, and how they handled him in Clone Wars season 7. I just think Maul was fantastic. And third, Ahsoka. So I think Ahsoka is the best representation of a female character in Star Wars. Although I think she's much better than Rey. I don't think Rey's bad, but I think Ahsoka is just another level. And for someone, Ahsoka, who initially, when she first come into Clone Wars, she was a very divisive character. She used to rush headlong into things. A lot of people hated her at the start of Clone Wars, but just her character development, she learns from how impulsive she is at the start. She grows. She's not as arrogant, and just the entire character development of Ahsoka. Yeah, chef's kiss. I think it's fantastic. Sorry, I've rambled on a bit there.
It's expected, don't worry. I think my top one just now would have to be Mando. I think that show was unreal. I didn't think it could get any better than the original 3 films, and then they came out with that. And I do think since that came out, it's kind of brought out like a new range of people who like Star Wars. I think it's mostly to do with Grogu than it is to do with Mandalorian, but I just love how you think you know him and then something happens and then he's got this like deeper sense of who he is, especially with the way he was with Grogu. Like, I didn't expect it at first, and then I was crying at the last episode. So he's definitely my top one. And then I think second would have to be Ahsoka. Ever since I watched because I remember my partner Jackie was like, when are you going to watch the Clone Wars? And I was like, nah, it's not for me. And then I watched it and I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
She's like on a whole different level. And then I think the third one is it's always a toss-up between Anakin or Obi-Wan. But I think Anakin is probably just that little bit more just because of how much like depth he's got. But I think I prefer Anakin to Darth Vader, if I'm honest.
Interesting.
Yeah. What about you, Matt?
It's difficult, isn't it? Because it's there's so many. But I think for me, I love Obi-Wan. I just love him.
Yeah.
And you know, from his portrayal in A New Hope to his Ewan McGregor's amazing portrayal of him in the sequels, and then obviously the TV show, which added some stuff, and that was, I really enjoyed the TV show. I know some people didn't, but
I did. Yeah, I thought it was incredible.
I loved it.
Yeah.
And it was captivating. It was fantastic. And
I
just don't know what. Obi-Wan just seems, he's pure of heart, isn't he? Like, and I think, and I think that I like that in a person. I'd like to think that Obi-Wan, he obviously makes mistakes, and that's what I love about Star Wars. The characters are allowed to make mistakes, but ultimately, I love him dearly. He's my man. And in terms of second, she's already been mentioned, and it has to be Ahsoka. And I think that journey, Damien mentioned that she was so, again, when I came into Star Wars, if you listen to the first episode, it was all out basically, apart from the last series. So I didn't know that this was vilified and hated character in the first series. But actually watching Ahsoka go from this young girl as a Padawan of Anakin to this beloved character over the fandom, and now will have her own TV series soon, and just the way that she, as a from a girl to a young woman to a woman, has grown in wisdom, and just her story arc is incredible. And I just think, for someone who hasn't actually been seen in the films, obviously been seen live action now, but she's loved for a reason, and I think that's great. And I think her whole character is just one of just perfection. And then I think my third one is a bit rogue, but it's actually probably Kanan from Rebels.
I'm glad you said that. Actually, I think Kanan's fantastic too. Yeah,
and I like him just because, again, he's flawed. His story, if you're not aware of it, I won't go into too much detail, but basically, he was alive during Order 66 when all the Jedi were killed under the instruction of Emperor Palpatine, and he escaped and he lived the life of a normal human being until the Force basically pulled him back. And his story is one of, there is redemption, as there is in every single Star Wars film ever, but there's also one of, getting over lost hurt and getting over lost pain. And I just think that's something that is good to be spoken about. So yeah, and the fact that he learns to become a teacher as well. Like, he doesn't want to be a master of a young Padawan. I don't think that's too much of a spoiler for Rebels. It happens pretty early on. Yeah. And so yeah, I'd say Kanan as a third, and his comic is like two trade paperbacks. It's only, I think it's 10 issues long. It's fantastic. I'd recommend that one to anyone, because the art in it is beautiful. But it's a really nice short story of just him, and you don't need to have any prior knowledge to enjoy it. So I'd say Kanan as my third.
Cool. Yeah, I'll definitely check that out myself then, because I think I'm glad you mentioned him, because I think Kanan's fantastic, brilliant character.
And then
I mentioned that.
Sorry, Sophie, who are your top three?
So my number one, and she's always been my number one, and I think probably always will be. So I've not managed to topple her. She's a character from Legends. She's from the Darth Bane trilogy by Drew Karpyshyn. Clone Wars fans will recognise Darth Bane. He does randomly appear in I want to say the Lost Missions or something like that. He was an old Sith Lord who brought about the rule of two. That is where that origin comes from. And so although he's the main character in the Darth Bane trilogy, which is a fantastic trilogy, and I cannot recommend it if you love your Sith and your bad guys and the dark side of the Force, like, go check that trilogy out. But his apprentice is a girl called Darsana, and she just blew me away from the moment that I saw her. She is unapologetically evil, and she is a villain, and we don't get many female villains. If we do, they're quite kind of caricature and a bit pantomime-y, and they certainly don't appear in Star Wars that much. And she just did bad things. There's nothing, she's not a particularly, there's an element of moral greyness to her, in that she's bad because bad things have happened to her, but she very much actively seeks out the dark side of the Force. I mean, to me, she's the embodiment of the Sith code, of that through passion I gain strength, and her journey, and because she knows her fate, the rule of two, she's got to take out her master. Like that's her whole goal, is how do I become strong enough to beat Darth Bane? And so watching her journey, and the two of them, their dynamic, as he knows the same thing. He's like, I'm training you up so that you can have a go at killing me. It's just it's sensational. And she's and she had the same lightsaber as Darth Maul as well, which or anyone with a dual bladed lightsaber, I'm like, I'm here for it.
Yeah. Good flex, isn't it?
Yeah. Exactly. So Darsana, she's my number one. And then my next, I'd say, is Jyn Erso from Rogue One. I mean, Rogue One it's my favorite Star Wars film. It's been my favorite thing so far that's come out of the Disney canon. I loved everything about it, but for me, for Jyn, I'm quite drawn to that reluctant hero element to her tale. I think it's very compelling when you see sort of, again, with her background, with her relationship with her parents, and then how she's kind of trying to get by in the galaxy. It's that, wasn't it, that don't look up. You'll get by if you just don't look up and keep your head down. And how she ends up being drawn into the rebellion and ultimately ends up doing the right thing and doing an incredible thing as well. I just think she's such a great character, and quite an inspiration as well. She's someone who sort of, I found her quite relatable, because she's not just an out and out hero who's just swashbuckling and does the right thing, and she's always going to do the right thing. Like, she's quite she's rash and she's impulsive and hot-headed, and I really liked that about
She's
her.
been hurt, no? Yeah.
Exactly. And she's angry, it's that it's that anger, and somehow that kind of anger that's in Cassian just goes the right way for the two of them. They do clash obviously initially, but then they kind of channel that rage to like burn the Empire down, which is I think she's amazing. And then my last one, she's all girls actually for me. So it's Padme. And I think it's Padme following having watched the Clone Wars. I think I really liked her in the prequel trilogy. I'm a prequels girl. Attack of the Clones is one of my most rewatched films. I love that film. And I think Padme's awesome in it. And I'm so gutted, obviously, for her end in Revenge of the Sith. I would always be team Padme should have brought the knife. I don't know if anyone's heard that it was the original scene she was written, that she confronted him on Mustafar with a knife, and I was like, we should have had Padme in the knife. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
That would have been amazing.
Right? That she went and she had a knife, and then that reaction then from Anakin, and then George cut it and he changed it and she didn't bring the knife, and I'm like, oh. But
is that
anyway,
why Anakin reacted the way he did then, do you think, because of that?
Apparently that's the
Because it come out of nowhere, his anger, didn't it? It seemed a bit, obviously he is angry, but it seemed a bit extreme out of nowhere, that bit out of character.
Yeah.
That's
have you read the have you read the Padme trilogy that they've done?
I only read the first one and I wasn't very keen on it. It didn't vibe with me. It didn't vibe. I was so disappointed, because that to me was an era that I really wanted to know about for Padme, between her being queen and senator. Without Anakin as well, I was really keen to kind of get to know Padme without him being that kind of presence in her life. But I did get the Padme content that I was after from the Clone Wars. And I think that's what really then catapulted her into like one of my favorites. She has so many cool episodes and missions and story arcs in the Clone Wars, as all three of them do. And so she's so cool from those. And I love that constant balance between like the diplomat, the senator, and the fighter in her. I think it's just fascinating to watch her. So Padme's my last one.
And then, speaking of like characters, and I'm probably going to get slated for it, right? But I do not get the hate towards Jar Jar. I think he's so funny.
I don't get it. I've never got it.
No, me neither.
I don't get it either.
Yeah, all you see is everyone saying how much they hate him and that he should have been cut out from it. But I'm like, I like how him and R2 and C-3PO are the ones that kind of bring the humour. And like, I know R2 makes me laugh quite a lot, and then same with Jar Jar, but I don't get the hate towards him.
I don't know. Going off Jar Jar, actually, I'm going to mention a theory that a lot of you probably have heard of before, which is Darth Jar Jar.
Yeah.
And I am convinced at one point it was the plan. I'm convinced of it, and there's so much to just to prove that it was. Like, for example, there's one point when you slow down a scene of the Phantom Menace when they land on Tatooine, and when Qui-Gon and R2 and Jar Jar making their way out towards Mos Espa, Captain Panaka and Padme come out, and the entire time, if you slow down, Jar Jar is stood behind Panaka, and you can see that he's saying everything that Captain Panaka is saying before he says it, and he's gently moving his hand like a Jedi mind trick. Yeah. There's a behind the scenes clip of George Lucas saying, Jar Jar is essential to my plan. You know, if the fans don't like Jar Jar, this falls apart. Wow. And the idea was that in The Empire Strikes Back, that with Yoda, when you first meet Yoda on Dagobah, Yoda's very, you don't think he's this wise old Jedi Master, do you? He's quite stupid. He's doing stupid things. And then that was supposed to be the contrast with Jar Jar. You meet Jar Jar. When you first meet Yoda, he's a stupid, silly character, but he turns out to be the wise old master. But with the prequels, you meet Jar Jar, he's a stupid, silly character, and he turns out to be the evil master. And there's other things as well with the end of the Phantom of the Menace, where they say when Maul was killed by Qui-Gon, I remember there's a scene with Mace Windu and Yoda, and Mace says, "But who did we kill, the master or the apprentice?" And then it zooms in, not just on Palpatine, but in the shot, it's Palpatine and Jar Jar specifically in that scene. It zoomed in on both of them, and they're both from Naboo. And even when you go to the Gungan city, they're all terrified of Jar Jar. All of them are terrified of him. He's there in every pivotal moment in Phantom of the Menace. He's there in the background, or he's there helping orchestrate it. He's the one who, obviously, he's there when Padme and Anakin leave Tatooine, and Anakin's confiding in Padme about how he's scared about leaving his mother behind. Jar Jar's there, asleep. Is he actually asleep in that moment? Maybe I'm looking into this too much, but yeah, I definitely think that at some point Jar Jar was supposed to be because Count Dooku comes out of nowhere. Maul's killed off at the end of the Phantom Menace, and then Dooku becomes the character. There's no hint towards Dooku in the Phantom Menace, and all of a sudden he comes out of nowhere in Attack of the Clones, and he's killed off pretty quickly in the Revenge of the Sith. He's killed off within the first 15 minutes or so, isn't he? Yeah, I firmly believe that Darth Jar Jar was supposed to be a thing, but the fan backlash obviously prevented it.
You've converted me to the theory.
In the Battle in Naboo, when he's fighting the droids, Jar Jar supposedly not a warrior, but somehow he's taking on all these droids with just his hand movements. He's seeming clumsy when he's doing it, but it's hard. Yeah.
So I thought I was gonna get I thought everyone's gonna say they hate him as well, but obviously no one hates Jar Jar, but is there any character throughout the whole, even if it's in books or in the films or whatever, is there any that you just don't like?
I'm not a fan of Kylo Ren.
Oh no! Controversial.
I think
you need to expand.
I think he was a wee bit wasted, and I think he did get Disney treatment where they just didn't do enough with him.
I agree.
I wouldn't say I hate him or don't like him.
For me, he was the best part of the sequels. But I definitely see. I don't think he was used to his full potential. I think he was the best part of the sequels, but he wasn't used to his full potential for me. And I don't like how they handled his character. I think that instead of Han Solo showing up as the Force Ghost, it should have been Anakin, because it just made sense to the story. He was trying to live up to the name of Anakin and Vader. It just made more sense for when he had his change of heart for Anakin to say, listen, I've been down this path before. Don't do this, rather than obviously it was touching with Han showing up. But I'd like to hear more about that, Sophie. Why you're not that keen on Kylo?
I don't think you can kill Han Solo and get away with it. I think to me, I never got over it, never. And I completely appreciate where they were going with the villain redemption arc. And I'm very much on board with Vader's redemption arc as well. But I think for me, Han was such a beloved character, and that was his father. And I'm to this day I still can't really work out what the point of it all was, killing. Apart from obviously that Harrison Ford didn't want to be in any more Star Wars films, but. That aside, from the story perspective, I was just like, to me it served no purpose. And I think the thing with Kylo that I find so frustrating is I can't remember who it was who said it to him. Someone said, you were Lor Santeca right at the start. He says, you came from the light, you were raised in the light. And I just think to just be annoyed because your mum works late or something and your dad's off smuggling, they're not reasons to just actively throw yourself into the dark side of the Force. He had love, even if yes, perhaps he was frustrated with the distance of his parents, but his mum's trying to run the galaxy, give her a break, and maybe help her. 100% they did love him. And I just think, for me, Kylo is a character who he's given the right and wrong choice, and he'll just actively move towards the wrong choice every single time. And whilst I appreciate that can make him quite entertaining and compelling for some, I never got over. In my book, if you kill Han Solo, I'm like, you're out. Sorry.
Yeah, see that. And
wish Chewie had aimed a little bit higher.
But that was a cool scene though, with him with the wound, and he's punching the wounds.
Yeah.
And he's screaming traitor at Finn. I did think that was a wicked scene. Yeah. Punching the wound, I just thought that was badass. But
I do like his fighting style, his whole style, and the way he wields it.
It's a very vicious really fighting style. It's not refined. It's vicious, and I love that.
Yeah, I can appreciate that.
But quickly before we move on from that, actually, you said about you're down with Vader's redemption. I'd just like to hear more people's thoughts on that, because apart from killing the younglings, I don't think Vader done anything wrong personally, and I wanted to.
Sorry.
Apart from killing the younglings, I think he was totally justified in it, especially after watching the Clone Wars. I think he was justified. I think killing the younglings was extreme, but
what about all the the Raiders? And I mean, I know they killed his mum. They did kill his mum. That's true. I mean, that is
the Tusken Raiders. I think. Sorry, let me rephrase. I think he's justified in his distaste for the Jedi, because I think the Jedi at that time in the story are pieces of shit, apart from Obi-Wan, to an extent Yoda.
I could give you. I think the thing with Vader. What about the Corridor of Doom in Rogue One? That felt a bit unnecessary.
That scene is incredible, and I love that. We're slowly getting all these different scenes of different characters with their own corridor scene. Luke got his in Mandalorian.
Yes.
Vader got his. Darth Maul got his at the end of Clone Wars without a fucking lightsaber. Yeah, I'm loving those corridor scenes at the moment. I think he's justified in his distaste for the Jedi, not in everything that he'd done. His opinion of the Jedi, I think, is totally justified in, because they were arse, especially Mace Windu, total arsehole. The way they treated him, and the way they treated Ahsoka in the Clone Wars, unforgivable.
See, I can get that bit, but I don't think it justifies him basically killing Padme either, because she literally did nothing wrong.
Yeah, Padme didn't, definitely.
Yeah, Padme and everything else I can kind of understand, but not those two.
No, yeah, the Padme he's totally in the wrong with. But again, there is another theory that did Anakin kill her? One of the theories is that Palpatine killed her. That when she's in childbirth, Palpatine is drawing on her life essence, and he's taking the essence from her life and he's passing it into Vader to keep Vader alive, to keep Anakin alive. And that is one of the theories, and I wouldn't be surprised if that was what they went with. But his treatment of Padme at the end, yeah, I agree, totally unjustified. I can see why he was angry, but he was obviously clouded in that rage. But I can't forgive him for that, and I don't think that's justified, definitely.
Have you see how you're talking about theories? Have you seen the one about when he's getting, like, Darth Vader's getting his helmet put on, and it only came about a good, like, I think it was only a couple of years ago, where just before they're putting the helmet on, he says, I think it's "Help me, Padme," but it's like really, really faint and you can't really hear it.
I've not heard it, but I wouldn't be surprised. I definitely wouldn't be surprised, because the whole character of Anakin, everything that he's done is because of Padme. You know, his life revolves around her, and she is the most important thing to him. And I definitely wouldn't be surprised by that.
I think. Sorry, on you go.
Oh, have you read the Vader comics as well?
Yes.
Yeah, because there's some stunning stuff in there, and I'm just thinking of that. There's a bit of the artwork in there, isn't there, where he shatters the window, doesn't he? And he's having that moment about thinking about Padme, isn't he? And it was just incredible. Like how they're really able to they're really diving into his character and his psyche now. Those Vader comics are amazing.
Even in the there's old Legends material as well of Padme's personal guard, Captain Typho, the guy with the eye patch. But there was an old Legends material of he was always in love with Padme, and he suspected that Vader had a hand in her death, and he suspected that Vader was Anakin. The Vader trapped, and obviously, you know, this is a normal guy going up against Vader. He's not going to last any, you know, he's not going to have any chance against him. So obviously Vader kills him, but Captain Typho says to him, you know, I know you killed Padme, and he takes great pleasure in the pain that name causes Vader at the time. Yeah, just everything to do with Padme once he becomes Vader is incredible. And I don't know if any of you guys have read the Revenge of the Sith novelization.
Yes.
Oh, it's amazing. And just the way
stunning.
It is stunning. And the way it describes when he becomes Vader and he's in that suit at the end, and it says, you know, you done this, no one else. You could have saved her. When you had the chance to run away with her, you chose yourself instead of her, and you reach out against the darkness, and you scream and you rage, and you realize that there is no Anakin Skywalker left. This is how it feels to be the way you are for the rest of your life. You're going to be in pain. Everything you've done is your own fault.
It's just chilled. Actually, I think if I could only recommend one Star Wars book for people to read, it would be The Revenge of the Sith novelization. It's just incredible.
It is. It definitely.
I haven't read it, and everyone's told me that I have to read it, and I really do need to read it.
This is
It adds so much. Like I think the prequels are good anyway. They're fantastic world building, and they create a massive expansive galaxy and all these politics. But there are problems with them, and the Clone Wars has gone a long way. The Clone Wars and Rebels have gone a massive long way to fixing those problems. But at the time, with Revenge of the Sith novelization coming out, which was along with the film, it just added so much context and what needed to be there. Because as good as the prequels were, they definitely were lacking in certain situations in terms of Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Padme, and Anakin's growth as a character. And the novelization of Revenge of the Sith is just, for its time, and even now, it's phenomenal. I genuinely think it is. It's incredible.
Yeah.
So, see, if we move away from, like, I was gonna say human characters, but you'll know what I mean in a minute. But does anyone have, like, a favourite sort of side character? Like, I'm sure it's 789, there's the Pogs, and then there's obviously Ewoks. I know people have very sort of divisive opinions about Ewoks. I personally love them.
Yeah.
But, like, who is everyone's favourite sort of, I'm gonna say side character? But I think my two would have to be Tide First, Grogu, and R2D2, I think.
Yeah.
I think R2 is just special, isn't he?
He is. He
Just
is.
the most loyal. He's like a puppy. You can't
Yeah.
not.
Yes.
Do, can He's loyal. He's got rockets. He's great. I really liked Maz Kanata. I thought she was
Yes,
a
I
great
liked her.
Mhm.
and I thought she brought a little bit of, mystical wisdom, and I was like, what is and then again, sadly, something dropped, but ultimately I thought she added, in the scenes that she was in, she added so much depth to the actual story of the sequels, and so let's give the sequel trilogy some love. Maz Kanata, I would say, was actually a really intriguing character that
Definitely.
that added a lot. So yeah, I would say she's up there with me, but R2 is always going to be my goat.
Yeah.
I love
I think I actually really liked Phasma from the sequels as well. I thought she was a really cool. She fascinated me from the Force Awakens, and I did read her novel as well. Her novel was really, really good. And yeah, she was another one that I kind of felt was done a little bit dirty. I feel like there could have been. I certainly think there would have been merit in keeping her alive for The Rise of Skywalker, as that kind of, just to then have that ultimate showdown with Finn. But yeah, I'm always quite fascinated by, when it comes to side characters, it's always generally like the bad ones, like Krennic also, I think is
Great.
so
Krennic is
much fun with Krennic.
Deploy the garrisons. Yeah, I think.
Oh, honestly, he's such a quotable character. He's unreal, and just the fact that like he wears a cape, and it's not necessary, and no one else in his rank wears a cape, and he's just, I do very, very passionate about Director Krennic, and then
Also gets
I
some
think
right sass with Darth Vader, which is always appreciated.
Yeah, definitely.
yeah.
Don't choke on those aspirations. Pal. Come on.
It's just, there were some people who didn't like that line and they felt it wasn't very Vader, and I was like, no, it was very Anakin, that line.
It was very definitely. That's what I love about Vader. You get those flashes of Anakin that comes out at times, and that was definitely a very Anakin line.
Yeah, that whole scene in his, I don't know, was it his throne room? I don't know what you'd call it, but yeah, it's Krennic is
Castle.
yeah, I do. Any of the sort of the Empire lot, I'm down for the like Imperial side characters.
I love that you said it, because I think it's brilliant. Rogue One is such an underrated film, and it's probably my top 3 favorite Star Wars films. Rogue One, I think it's incredible. For you to mention Krennic, he is a great character, really is.
Yeah, I'm kind of hoping he'll come and make an appearance in Andor. I don't know. I've been sort of trying to find clues online as to whether he will come in it or not, but I'd love to see him back in that. I think it would be so cool. He's just so much fun.
Thank you so much to everyone who is listening, and if you liked the discussion that we had, we also have our community Discord, which is Fantasy Fellowship. You can find more information over on our Instagram page at fantasy_fellowship, our Twitter at Fan Fellowship, and we also have a website which is www.fantasy-fellowship.co.uk. If you did enjoy this fandom discussion episode, be sure to hit like and make sure you subscribe to us to keep up to date with more Fantasy Fellowship videos, and listen to the next episode of the fandom discussion, which will be the Disney TV adaptations.